They laughed as I begged for my sick brother's life, unaware that their scorn would soon unleash a legacy of power and secrets they couldn't possibly comprehend. The chill wasn't just in the November air that seeped through my threadbare coat. It was a deep, gnawing cold in the pit of my stomach. It was the cold of an empty pantry and an eviction notice taped to the door. Its stark red letters, a constant screaming reminder of our failure. My failure. My little brother, Leo, was asleep on the couch, his small chest rattling with a cough that had lingered for weeks. The doctor's words echoed in my head. It's a persistent infection. He needs stronger medication, better food, a warmer environment. All things that cost money. Money I didn't have. That's why I was standing here, on the immaculate marble steps of my Aunt Carol and Uncle Mark's house. Their home wasn't just a house, it was a fortress of wealth, a 2-story monument to everything I lacked. The manicured lawn looked like a green velvet carpet, and the oversized oak door seemed to mock the flimsy, peeling paint of my own apartment door. Swallowing my pride, which felt like a mouthful of broken glass, I pressed the doorbell. The chime was a soft, melodic tune, a world away from the jarring buzz at my building. Aunt Carol opened the door, her face a carefully constructed mask of polite surprise. Her pearls gleamed, and her cashmere sweater probably cost more than my month's rent. "Clara, what a surprise." "Hi, Aunt Carol. Is Uncle Mark here? I need to talk to you both." She led me into the living room, a cavernous space that smelled of lemon polish and potpourri. Uncle Mark was in his leather armchair, a thick financial newspaper spread across his lap. My cousin, Brandon, who was 22, but still lived off his parents like a teenage prince, was scrolling on his phone, not even bothering to look up. The air was thick with a comfortable silence I was about to shatter. I stood awkwardly, my worn-out boots feeling like a disease on their pristine white rug. I explained everything. I kept my voice steady, laying out the facts without emotion. The lost hours at my waitressing job, the rising cost of Leo's medication, the final warning letter from our landlord. I didn't beg. I presented it as a business proposition. "I'm asking for a loan," I finished, my hands clenched into fists in my pockets. "I've calculated it all. I can pay you back with interest. I'll work 2 jobs, 3, whatever it takes. It's for Leo. He needs this." Silence. Uncle Mark slowly folded his newspaper, peering at me over his glasses. His expression was one of mild distaste, as if he'd found a bug in his salad. "Clara," he began, his voice dripping with condescension, "we work very hard for our money. We don't believe in handouts. It builds poor character." "It's not a handout," I repeated, my voice tighter now. "It's a loan, to keep a roof over your nephew's head." Aunt Carol sighed, a dramatic put-upon sound. "Oh, it's always something, isn't it? Your mother was the same, always chasing some dream, never a practical bone in her body. It seems you've inherited her financial sense, or lack thereof." That's when Brandon snorted, a loud, ugly sound. He finally looked up from his phone, a smirk playing on his lips. "You want a loan? Seriously? Maybe you should have thought about that before dropping out of community college to take care of Leo. Bad investment." The rage that surged through me was hot and blinding. My mother worked her fingers to the bone, and I dropped out to raise my brother after she died because no one else would. Certainly not you. Uncle Mark stood up, his face hardening. "That's enough. We're not responsible for your poor life choices, Clara. The answer is no." Desperation made me reckless. "Please," I whispered, the words scraping my throat raw. "Just enough for the rent and the medicine. I'm begging you." And then it happened. Aunt Carol let out a little titter. Brandon started to chuckle. Uncle Mark cracked a smile, a cruel, thin line. And then they were laughing, all 3 of them. It wasn't a small chuckle. It was a full-throated, belly-shaking laugh, echoing in the huge, empty-feeling room. They were laughing at me, at my poverty, at my sick little brother, at my desperation. It was the cruelest sound I had ever heard. It broke something inside me that I didn't know could still be broken. I turned and walked out without another word, their laughter chasing me down the marble steps and into the cold night. The tears I'd held back finally streamed down my face, freezing on my cheeks. I had never felt so utterly alone, so completely worthless. Back in my tiny, cold apartment, I checked on Leo, tucking his thin blanket more tightly around him. We were at the end of the line. There was nothing left, no one to turn to. Sinking onto the floor of my bedroom, my back against the wall, my eyes landed on the small, carved wooden box on my nightstand. It was my mother's, the only thing of any real meaning she'd left me. She'd brought it with her from her home island in the Caribbean, a place she never talked about. It was made of a dark, fragrant wood, intricately carved with hummingbirds and tropical vines. I'd always thought it was just a pretty, sentimental trinket, worth nothing. Tonight, in my grief and rage, I picked it up, wanting to smash it against the wall to destroy the last piece of a mother who had left me in this mess. My fingers traced the familiar carvings, the smooth wood a stark contrast to my raw emotions. As my thumb pressed hard into the eye of the largest carved hummingbird, I felt a faint click. I froze. I had held this box 1,000 times and never felt that before. With trembling hands, I pressed again. A tiny, almost invisible section of the base popped open, revealing a hidden compartment, no bigger than a stick of gum. Tucked inside was a folded yellowed piece of paper and a small, ornate brass key. My heart hammered against my ribs as I unfolded the paper. It wasn't a letter. It was a document, a legal deed of trust from a law firm in Saint-Pierre, Martinique. At the top was a name I had never seen before, Ilara Dubois, my mother's birth name, and below it a long string of account numbers and a single cryptic sentence, handwritten in my mother's elegant script. Your birthright awaits, my little bird. The true key is not in your hand, but in the heart of the storm. My breath hitched. Ilara Dubois, my mother. It was like reading the name of a stranger. She had always been just Mom, a tired waitress with a soft smile and hands that were perpetually chapped from dishwater. This woman, Ilara Dubois, the owner of a deed from a foreign law firm, felt like a character from a novel. I stared at the brass key, then at the elegant, looping script, the heart of the storm. It meant nothing to me. It felt like a cruel joke, a breadcrumb leading to a dead end, designed to give a dying hope one last flutter before extinguishing it for good. Leo coughed in his sleep, a wet, rattling sound that sliced through the quiet apartment and brought me crashing back to reality. A fantasy about a secret inheritance wouldn't pay the rent. For 2 days, the document and the key sat on my nightstand, mocking me. The eviction notice on the door seemed to get brighter, the red ink screaming. I sold my mother's old locket, the one I swore I'd never part with, just to buy another bottle of cough syrup for Leo and some instant noodles. It got me $40. It felt like setting a priceless painting on fire to keep warm for 5 minutes. On the third night, with Leo's fever climbing and the pantry completely bare, I knew I had nothing left to lose. My pride was already a pile of ashes at my aunt and uncle's feet. What was one more ounce of foolish hope? I used the last of my phone's data, tethering it to my ancient, slow-as-molasses laptop. I typed Dubois and Associates, Saint-Pierre, Martinique into the search bar, my fingers clumsy with cold and skepticism. My heart jumped when a professional, elegant website appeared. Palm trees swayed in a banner video behind a crest bearing the initials DNA. It was real. The firm was real. I clicked on the Our Team page, and there, staring back at me from a black and white photograph, was a stern-looking man with kind eyes. The nameplate read, Jean-Luc Dubois, senior partner, the same last name. It couldn't be a coincidence. With a surge of adrenaline-fueled desperation, I composed an email. I explained who I was, the daughter of Ilara Dubois, known to me as Sarah Miller. I told them about the box, the key, the deed. I felt like a scammer, like one of those people who send emails about a long-lost prince. I attached a shaky photo of the document and the key, my thumb partially obscuring a corner. I hit send, and then I sat back, the weight of everything crashing down on me again. I expected nothing. A bounce-back email, or worse, complete silence. The silence lasted for 4 agonizing days. The landlord left another, more aggressive note. I started packing our few belongings into cardboard boxes I found behind the grocery store. I didn't know where we would go, maybe a shelter, but my mind couldn't even process the thought. It was too bleak. Then, on Friday morning, an email chimed on my phone. The subject line was simple: regarding the estate of Alara Dubois. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely open it. It was from Jean-Luc Dubois himself. The email was brief, formal, and requested a video conference call at my earliest convenience. He included a link. I clicked it immediately, not even bothering to change out of my stained sweatshirt or brush my hair. A few moments later, the face from the website filled my screen. He looked older now, his hair completely white, but his eyes were the same. "Mademoiselle Miller?" he asked, his voice a low, gravelly baritone with a heavy French Caribbean accent. "Yes, Clara. That's me," I croaked. "I am Jean-Luc Dubois. I was your mother's cousin and her attorney. It is a shock to finally meet you." He looked at me intently, his gaze searching my face. "You have your mother's eyes," he said softly. He asked me to hold the document and the key up to the camera. He examined them for a long time, humming thoughtfully. "Yes," he finally said, leaning back in his leather chair. "This is all genuine. The trust your mother established is very much real." I felt a wave of dizziness. A trust? What kind of trust? He gave me a small, sad smile. "Your mother's family, the Dubois, we were prominent on the island for many generations. Sugar, shipping, land. Alara, she was the sole heir. She ran away from it all. She wanted a simple life, away from the pressures of her name. But she did not leave her child with nothing. This trust, mademoiselle, it is not a small sum of money. It is a legacy, properties, investments, a portfolio of considerable magnitude." Magnitude. The word hung in the air between us, between his mahogany-paneled office in the sun-drenched Caribbean and my cramped, freezing apartment. "So, I can access it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "There is a final security protocol. Your mother was a very careful woman. The brass key opens a physical safe deposit box here, but to liquidate or transfer any assets from the trust itself, a verbal passphrase is required, a phrase known only to her and her chosen heir." My stomach dropped. "The note," I said, my voice trembling as I read it aloud. "The true key is not in your hand, but in the heart of the storm." Monsieur Dubois nodded slowly. "Indeed, your mother always was poetic. Do you know what it means?" My mind went blank. The heart of the storm? It was gibberish. Another dead end. Tears of frustration welled in my eyes. It was all a game, a test from the grave I was destined to fail. Then a memory flickered. Me, 6 years old, hiding under the covers as thunder rattled the windows of our old apartment. My mother, her voice a low, calming melody, singing a French lullaby she said her own grandmother used to sing. She sang it every time a storm rolled in, telling me the safest place to be was right in the middle of it all, in the eye, in its heart. And the song she sang, the one that always chased the fear away, was called Cœur de Cyclone, Heart of the Cyclone. Cœur de Cyclone, I breathed into the microphone. The phrase is Cœur de Cyclone. A wide, brilliant smile spread across Jean-Luc Dubois' face. He let out a long breath and clasped his hands together. "Magnifique," he whispered. "It is correct." For a single fleeting moment, pure, unadulterated relief washed over me. I had done it. We were safe. But then, the smile faded from his face, replaced by a look of grave concern. "Mademoiselle Clara, I must tell you I am profoundly relieved you have contacted me," he said, his voice dropping to a serious tone. "Because you are not the first person to try and claim this inheritance. The person who has been petitioning my office for the past 6 months, using a forged power of attorney and attempting to have your mother declared legally dead, is a man named Mark Peterson, your uncle." The name hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. Mark Peterson, Uncle Mark, the man who had laughed in my face as I begged for enough money to keep my sick brother warm, the man who lectured me on the value of hard work while actively trying to steal a fortune from his dead sister-in-law's orphaned children. The laughter, that cruel, dismissive sound, echoed in my ears again, but this time it wasn't just mockery. It was the sound of calculated deception. He wasn't just heartless, he was a vulture. "My uncle?" I managed to say, the words feeling foreign and choked in my throat. But how could he know? My mother never spoke of this to anyone. She cut off all contact with her family here years before she even met my father. Jean-Luc Dubois leaned forward, his expression grim. "That is the question that has troubled me, mademoiselle. Your uncle first contacted us shortly after your mother's passing. He presented a death certificate and a rather amateurishly forged will that named him as executor. He claimed your mother had reconciled with him and confided her history. We were, of course, suspicious. The Dubois family has protocols. We requested proof of his identity, details about your mother's life he couldn't possibly know. His attempts became more aggressive, threatening legal action. But without the key and without the passphrase, he was powerless. He knew of the inheritance, but he didn't have the means to access it. His recent petition to have your mother declared legally dead in Martinique, with himself as the sole surviving family contact, was his most brazen attempt yet. A cold, creeping horror washed over me. They hadn't just refused to help us. They had refused to help us while actively trying to steal the very means of our salvation. They wanted us to fail, to disappear. An evicted, desperate single woman and her sick kid would be much easier to deal with or ignore than legitimate heirs who showed up on their doorstep. Their laughter wasn't just cruelty, it was relief. They thought I was on the brink of destitution, no threat to their scheme. "So, what now?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of terror and white-hot fury. "Now, we move quickly and quietly," Monsieur Dubois said, his voice firm and reassuring. "First, I will wire an initial disbursement to an account of your choosing, enough to secure your housing, your brother's medical care, and your travel expenses. You and your brother need to come to Martinique as soon as possible. We must formalize the transfer of the estate into your name before your uncle can attempt any further legal maneuvering. Once you are here, under my protection, he will have no power." He asked for my bank details, and I numbly read out the account number that had held a balance of $17.34 for the past week. He assured me the funds would be there within the hour. An hour. In 1 hour, my entire world would pivot on its axis. We ended the call, and I sat in stunned silence, the laptop screen's glow illuminating my disbelieving face. It felt like a dream. The email notification from my bank arrived 52 minutes later. I opened the app, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I had to close my eyes and open them again to make sure I was seeing it correctly. The balance, which had been under $20, now had a lot of zeros after it, more zeros than I had ever seen in one place, a comma, then another comma. I just stared, tears streaming down my face, not of sadness, but of a profound, earth-shattering relief that was so immense it was physically painful. We were safe. Leo was going to be okay. The first thing I did was call the doctor's office and pay for Leo's medication, telling them to give me the strongest, best version they had. The second was to call my landlord. His gruff, impatient voice answered the phone. "Listen, Clara, if this is about another extension—" "It's not," I said, my own voice clear and cold and utterly devoid of the desperation he was used to. I'm calling to inform you that I'll be paying the remainder of my lease in full tomorrow morning, all 6 months, and I'm also interested in purchasing the apartment, in cash." The silence on the other end of the line was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The next 2 days were a blur. I bought Leo new clothes, a mountain of healthy food, and a humidifier for his room that puffed out a gentle, medicated steam. The color was already returning to his cheeks. I booked 2 first-class tickets to Fort-de-France, Martinique. I packed our few sentimental belongings and arranged for the rest of our cheap furniture to be donated. As I was folding my mother's old, worn-out sweater, the smell of her faint perfume clinging to the fabric, the rage returned. A low, simmering fire in my belly. They had let her son get sick. They had watched her daughter starve, all while trying to steal her legacy. I thought about the humiliation, the cold dismissal, the soul-crushing laughter. A simple, quiet victory wasn't enough. They deserved to know. They deserved to see what they had tried to destroy. On the morning of our flight, with a taxi waiting downstairs to take us to the airport, I made one last stop. I drove my newly purchased, modest but reliable used car to their neighborhood, the engine purring where my old one used to rattle. I parked across the street from the Fortress of Wealth. I saw Brandon's sports car in the driveway, the one his parents had just bought him for his birthday. I thought about Leo's rattling cough and felt the fire burn hotter. I walked up the same immaculate stone path, my new leather boots making a confident click-clack where my old ones had shuffled. I rang the bell, the melodic chime sounding less intimidating now. Aunt Carol opened the door, her face a mask of annoyance that quickly morphed into shock. I was not the pathetic, shivering waif she had thrown out a week ago. I was wearing a well-tailored wool coat. My hair was clean and styled. My eyes were not filled with desperation, but with something she couldn't quite read. "Clara," she stammered, "what on earth are you doing here?" "I just came to say thank you," I said, my voice sweet as poison. "Your refusal to help was clarifying. It forced me to look for other solutions." Uncle Mark and Brandon appeared behind her, drawn by the sound of my voice. Their expressions mirrored Carol's, confusion mixed with suspicion. "We told you we're not giving you any money," Mark said gruffly. "Oh, I know," I replied, a small smile playing on my lips. "I don't need your money. See, it turns out my mother, Alara Dubois, was a bit more resourceful than you gave her credit for. She left me everything." I let the name hang in the air, watching for a reaction. Uncle Mark's face went white. A flicker of pure, unadulterated panic flashed in his eyes before he masked it. Aunt Carol just looked confused. "Alara who?" "That's funny," I mused, tilting my head. "Mark, you seem to know the name. You've been corresponding with her attorney, Jean-Luc Dubois, for months, haven't you? Trying to get your hands on the Dubois family fortune?" The color drained from Carol and Brandon's faces as they turned to stare at the patriarch of their perfect family. I savored their stunned silence for a moment before delivering the final blow. "My brother and I are moving to Martinique. I'm taking control of my estate, and my lawyers," I said, emphasizing the plural, "will be in touch regarding your fraudulent claims. Have a lovely life." I turned to leave, feeling their shocked gazes boring into my back. It was a perfect exit. But as I reached the bottom of the steps, a sleek black car I hadn't noticed before pulled up to the curb just in front of me. The back window slid down with a silent hum. Inside sat an elderly woman, her face a web of fine lines, her eyes sharp and intelligent. She was dressed impeccably in white linen, a string of black pearls around her neck. She looked directly at me, her gaze piercing. "So," she said, her voice carrying an unmistakable authority, tinged with the same French-Caribbean accent as Jean-Luc. "You are Alara's girl. I was beginning to wonder if you would ever show up. We have much to discuss about what your mother truly ran away from." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My perfectly orchestrated moment of triumphant revenge evaporated, replaced by a sudden, unnerving chill that had nothing to do with the November air. Behind me, I could feel the stunned, hateful silence of my aunt and uncle. In front of me sat this woman, an apparition of old-world power, who spoke of my mother as if she'd known her intimately. Her presence was magnetic, radiating an authority that made my confrontation with the Petersons feel like a childish spat in a schoolyard. "I'm sorry," I stammered, my newfound confidence deserting me. "Who are you?" Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. They were eyes that had seen decades, maybe centuries of stories unfold. "I am Solange Dubois, your great-aunt, Ilara's aunt, your grandmother's sister." She patted the empty leather seat beside her. "Get in, child, your taxi can wait. We are long overdue for a conversation." It wasn't a request. It was a command wrapped in the thinnest veil of politeness. I glanced back at the house. Mark, Carol, and Brandon were still frozen on the doorstep, their faces a comical mixture of horror and confusion. This was a new player on the board, one they clearly hadn't anticipated either. Hesitantly, I opened the car door and slid in. The interior smelled of expensive leather and jasmine perfume. The door closed with a heavy, satisfying thud, sealing us in a bubble of quiet luxury. "My nephew Jean-Luc informed me of your call," she said as the car pulled smoothly away from the curb, leaving my former family as statues on their perfect lawn. "He is a good man, a competent lawyer, but he is a man who deals in paper and ink. I deal in blood and history." She turned her sharp gaze on me. "Do you know why your mother ran, Clara?" "She wanted a simple life," I recited, the words feeling thin and inadequate in this woman's presence, away from the pressure of her name. Solange let out a short, dry laugh. "That is the story she told herself, perhaps. The story she gave you. The truth is always more complicated. The Dubois family did not build its fortune on sugar and shipping alone. We built it on influence, on knowing things, on ensuring the right people were in power and the wrong people were removed from it. Our legacy is a web of secrets and obligations that stretches back for 200 years. Your mother, Ilara, was born to be the matriarch, the one who would hold all the strings, but she had no stomach for it. She saw the cost, the compromises. She called it a gilded cage built on bones. So she fled, hoping to spare her child from the same fate. The image of my mother, tired and gentle, her hands smelling of bleach and onions from the diner, flickered in my mind. It was impossible to reconcile that woman with the one Solange was describing, an heir to a shadowy dynasty, a queen who had abdicated her throne. "I don't understand," I said, my voice small. "What does that have to do with me?" "Everything," she replied, her voice dropping. "When Ilara ran, she created a vacuum, a power vacuum that others have been trying to fill ever since. Your Uncle Mark is a fool, a greedy little man grasping at loose change. He is an amateur. The real players are far more dangerous. They have been watching, waiting for years for the Dubois line to officially end, for the estate to be declared dormant and carved up." Her perfectly manicured fingers tapped an impatient rhythm on her alligator skin handbag. "Your appearance has thrown their plans into chaos. You are not just an heiress, Clara. You are a target." The taxi I had waiting for me and Leo, the first-class tickets, the new life in the sun. It all felt incredibly naive now. I had thought I was escaping a life of poverty and desperation, but it seemed I was walking into a gilded war zone. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. "Because Jean-Luc can give you the money. He can give you the houses, the stocks, the legal titles, but he cannot give you the protection that comes with our name, with our power. Only I can do that. And I will, on one condition." She paused, her dark eyes boring into mine, weighing, measuring. You must accept your birthright, not just the wealth, but the responsibility. You must become the matriarch your mother refused to be. You will learn our ways, our history. You will learn who our friends are, and more importantly, who our enemies are. You will learn to pull the strings. In return, I will ensure that you and your brother are untouchable. We pulled up to a private airfield I didn't even know existed. A sleek private jet sat waiting on the tarmac, its engines humming softly. "This will take you and the boy to Martinique far more discreetly than any commercial flight," Solange said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "My people have already collected your brother and your luggage from your apartment. They are waiting for you on board." My head was spinning. My brother? Strangers were in my apartment. With my brother? I felt a surge of panic. "Leo? Is he okay?" "He is perfectly safe," she assured me, her tone brooking no argument. "Safer with my men than he has been in years. The decision is yours, Clara. You can take the money and run, just like your mother did. You can try to live a simple life, always looking over your shoulder, waiting for the shadows to catch up to you. Or you can come with me, embrace who you are, and build a fortress around your family that no one will ever dare to breach." The choice felt impossible. One path was a continuation of my mother's dream of a quiet life, but a life now haunted by unseen threats. The other was a descent into a world of power and secrets that my mother had risked everything to escape. I looked from the jet, a symbol of unimaginable power and wealth, back at my great-aunt's unyielding face. I thought of Leo, of his frailness, of the terror I felt when I couldn't afford his medicine. Whatever this world was, whatever dangers it held, it also held the power to keep him safe. Truly safe. "Okay," I whispered, the word feeling both like a surrender and a declaration of war. "I'll do it." A slow, genuine smile finally bloomed on Solange's face. "Excellent. There is much to do. We will begin your education on the flight." She handed me a slim, leather-bound book from her handbag. "This is your family's ledger. It begins in 1802. Memorize the names, especially the ones with a red mark next to them. Those are the families that owe us a debt, or the ones we owe." I boarded the jet, my mind reeling. Leo was already there, sitting in a plush leather seat, wide-eyed and munching on a fancy-looking cookie, a kind-faced woman in a neat uniform sitting with him. He was safe. He was happy. I sat down opposite them and opened the ledger. The pages were filled with elegant, spidery script, detailing transactions, marriages, alliances, and betrayals. As I flipped through the decades, my eyes caught a familiar name next to a date from the early 1990s, Peterson. And next to it, a single chilling annotation written in my mother's own hand. "The first betrayal. He knows about the island. He must not be allowed to follow." But that wasn't what made the blood drain from my face. It was the entry directly below it, dated just 3 years ago. It was the name of a powerful, ruthless corporate developer who had been trying to force all the tenants out of my apartment building for the past year. A man whose final eviction notice was still taped to my door. According to the ledger, the Dubois family owned the entire city block. The revelation hit me with the force of a physical impact. The eviction notice, the landlord's pressure, the rundown state of the building. It wasn't just a symptom of my poverty. It was a calculated attack. This developer, Alistair Finch, a name I'd only ever seen on menacing legal letters, hadn't been targeting a random low-income building. He had been targeting USACO. He knew who lived there. He was one of the real players Solange had warned me about, chipping away at the edges of the dormant Dubois estate, testing the defenses. My struggle wasn't a coincidence. It was a siege, and my uncle... My mother knew he was a threat decades ago. He hadn't just stumbled upon this secret, he'd been nursing his greed for half his life. The flight to Martinique passed in a daze. Solange was a relentless tutor. She walked me through the ledger, her commentary bringing the spidery script to life. She painted a picture of a family that operated like its own sovereign nation, with allies and enemies, treaties and wars. She spoke of favors owed by politicians, of judges whose careers were launched with Dubois capital, of business rivals quietly ruined. It was terrifying and intoxicating. For the first time, I understood the gilded cage my mother had fled. It wasn't just pressure. It was a moral labyrinth from which there was no easy exit. But I also saw the power to protect, to build, to provide a level of security I couldn't have dreamed of. When we landed, we were not met by taxis, but by a fleet of black cars. We bypassed customs and were swept away to the Dubois estate. It wasn't a house. It was a sprawling compound of white stucco and dark wood, nestled in a lush valley overlooking the turquoise sea. It was paradise, but a paradise guarded by high walls and discreet security. Jean-Luc was there to greet us, his relief at seeing me palpable. He handled the legal formalities with swift efficiency. Within 24 hours, the estate of Alara Dubois was officially and irrevocably transferred to me, Clara Miller Dubois. My new name felt heavy, a mantle I was not yet sure how to wear. The first few weeks were a whirlwind. Leo thrived. Under the care of the island's best doctors, his cough vanished, replaced by the happy shouts of a healthy 7-year-old exploring his new, vast home. He was assigned a tutor, a bodyguard who looked like a friendly giant, and he was deliriously happy. Seeing him safe, truly safe, solidified my resolve. I had made the right choice. My education continued. Solange taught me about finance, power, and perception. The greatest weapon we have, she'd say, is that our enemies consistently underestimate us. They see old money, island leisure. They do not see the steel beneath the silk. My first test came in the form of Alistair Finch. A week after my arrival, he filed an aggressive new motion to seize the apartment building for demolition. He thought he was kicking a dead horse. He had no idea a dragon had just awoken. "He is a vulture," Solange said, reading the legal notice I'd been sent. "He preys on the weak. It is time to show him what happens when the prey bites back." Guided by Solange and Jean-Luc, I didn't just fight the eviction. I launched a counteroffensive. We dug into Finch's company. The Dubois family's influence opened doors that would be sealed to anyone else. We found financial irregularities, backroom deals with city officials, a history of safety violations on his other projects. We didn't just leak it to the press. I bought a controlling interest in the media outlet that would break the story. Then I scheduled a video conference with Finch himself. He appeared on screen, smug and condescending, expecting to bully the representative of some absentee landlord. He saw a young woman. He saw weakness. "Mr. Finch," I began, my voice calm and steady, echoing the tones I'd learned from Solange. "I am Clara Dubois, the owner of the property on Elm Street. I see you're still interested in it." His eyes widened slightly at the name, but he recovered quickly. "The building is a blight. My development project is good for the city. You'd be wise to accept my final offer." "I have a counteroffer," I said, smiling sweetly. "You will drop your bid. You will pay for the complete renovation of the building, bringing it up to luxury standards at no cost to the tenants. You will also make a 7-figure donation to the city's housing fund. In return for your civic generosity, the evidence of your creative accounting and bribery of the zoning commissioner will not find its way to the district attorney's office. This is not a negotiation." The color drained from his face. He stared at me, truly seeing me for the first time, not as a girl, but as a threat. He sputtered, he blustered, but the fight was gone. He knew he was beaten. With Finch neutralized, there was only one loose end left: the Petersons. My vengeance on them would not be loud or dramatic. It would be silent, precise, and absolute. Jean-Luc discovered that Uncle Mark had used his own house as collateral for a high-risk business loan to fund his legal battle against us. The loan was held by a bank in which the Dubois estate, it turned out, was a major shareholder. A few phone calls were made. A few strings were pulled. Mark's loan was called in. All of it. Immediately. His assets were frozen pending an investigation into his fraudulent claims against a foreign estate. The life they had built, the fortress of wealth from which they had laughed down at me, crumbled to dust in a matter of days. I received one final frantic call from Aunt Carol. She was sobbing, hysterical. "How could you do this to us? We're family." "You stopped being family when you laughed while my brother was sick," I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. "You laughed at my poverty while trying to steal my inheritance. The difference between you and me, Aunt Carol, is that I had nothing and was willing to work for it. You had everything, and you were willing to destroy a child to get more. Goodbye." I hung up and blocked her number. Months later, standing on a balcony overlooking the Caribbean Sea, I watched Leo chase hummingbirds in the garden below, his laughter echoing in the warm air. The ledger sat on the table beside me, its pages filled with the stories of my ancestors. It was no longer just a book of secrets. It was a manual of survival, a testament to the strength of a family that endured. My mother had run from this life to protect me, but in doing so, she had given me the one thing I needed to reclaim it: a quiet life, a hidden key, and the heart of a storm. I had not just accepted my inheritance, I had become it. The cage was open, but I had no intention of flying away. I was going to rule from it,